The odds against winning are high, and so are the odds against finding oil. Prospecting for oil, wildcatting, is one of the longest shots in American business. Let's call this long shot Wildcat number 1. Number 1 is in unproved territory. Anything can happen here, or nothing. Nothing at all. For although science says there's oil somewhere in the ground below, statistics say she'll be a dry hole by odds of 10 to 1. Despite these odds against finding any oil at all, drilling rigs by the thousands are constantly joining the worldwide search for oil. For the worldwide need for oil seems insatiable. The United States alone gets a full half of her energy from oil, and it takes 300 million gallons every day. But that's today's figure, and who is to say what it will be tomorrow? Thus, the one sure thing in the risky game of finding oil is that the search for it will not only expand, it will multiply. And since the stakes are high, so is the ante. The derrick itself, the drawworks, the pumps, the costly equipment needed in the needle-in-the-haystack search for oil represent a really heavy capital investment. For none of them is really expendable. None, that is, except drilling bits and this. This viscous liquid is actually the unsung but vital lifeblood of drilling for oil. With practically no exceptions, an oil well cannot be drilled down into the earth without it. It too is a product of the earth, and to the earth it will return when the drilling of this hole is through. It's a lowly substance, for in essence it is merely mud. Yes, mud. Yet it is the substance of a big and thriving American business. For this is no ordinary mud. This is drilling mud, expertly engineered and artfully compounded for just one purpose: to be pumped into a hole in the ground. Never for a moment while the bit is turning can the circulation of the mud down through the drill pipe be halted. Down, down, through the drill pipe and out through the rotating bit as it makes hole deep in the earth. Here the mud lubricates the bit, safely reducing the heat of friction, and at the same time flushes the cuttings from the rotating cutters, carrying them up and away from the bottom of the hole, through the space between the well bore and the drill pipe. Drilling mud is made of special materials so that it will seal the rough wall of the hole with a protective mud cake, thus preventing sloughing or caving of the walls until the permanent steel casing can be cemented into place. Mud must also control the high pressures found deep in the earth, because if gas, oil, or hot salt water are not confined, trouble results. Yes, very serious trouble, a blowout which may cost millions. Heavy barium sulfate added to the mud increases the weight of the fluid column and prevents such disasters. Mud is also the oil man's eyes, for by the feel of the mud, he can practically see what the drill is encountering thousands of feet below. He'll probably get his first sign of gas or even oil from it, and close examination of the cuttings brought up by the circulating mud enables the experienced oil man to set his further course. Expertly compounded drilling mud has helped greatly to reduce, but is not entirely eliminated, all of the hazards in the risky business of drilling for oil. There was a time when costly blowouts were almost the rule rather than the exception. And even today, the scourge of the oil fields may destroy the entire rig. Nowadays, however, even though the mud used up in the drilling of a single well may cost as much as $300,000, drillers universally consider it highly economical insurance against disaster. And as a direct result of this universal need and universal use, the mud story is also a success story, unusual even in this land of success stories. The Magnet Cove Barium Corporation, maker of Magcobar drilling muds, became a going concern only a short while ago as time is reckoned. Yet in only a little more than 10 years, Magcobar's production reached impressive heights and kept right on climbing. In fact, climbing at a rate actually faster than that of the basic oil industry. The Magnet Cove Barium Corporation is a mining company, mining widely held proved reserves of high-grade barite, bentonite, and other raw materials from Magcobar's own mines. Here in this one location at Magnet Cove, Arkansas, for example, the company has enough proved reserves both above and below ground to satisfy this country's oil drilling needs for at least another generation. For at Magnet Cove, Magcobar is tapping the largest known barite deposit in the entire world. But in spite of these huge reserves, management, taking no chances, stretches its own domestic barite supply by the addition of high-grade imported ores. Here at the Magcobar plant in New Orleans, ore from Nova Scotia is economically processed close to points of consumption, reached easily and quickly by rail and by water. And south of the border, from our good neighbor in Old Mexico, extensive mountainous holdings yield another rich source of barite. Mined from numerous small deposits spread over this difficult terrain, the nature of this operation makes impossible a more modern approach, and the good old pick and shovel method is still the most reliable and economical. With gathering speed, the Mexican ore is transported across the International Bridge, over the Rio Grande to Brownsville, Texas. Here, too, at the company's southernmost plant, barite is processed close to the local market, ready for distribution in the Rio Grande Valley and to offshore locations. And when it comes to bentonite, that is Magcogel bentonite, another basic ingredient of drilling mud, the company's raw material inventory at Gray Bull, Wyoming is most impressive, enough to supply expected demand for somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 generations. But fully adequate proved domestic reserves as well as imported ores are not alone enough. So, as a mining company, Magcobar counts high on its list of assets its modern mill at Malvern, Arkansas. Not only the largest mill of its kind in the world, but one of the most efficient as well. Since drilling mud is fundamentally a chemical, Magcobar treats it as a chemical. For instance, an exclusive flotation process, pioneered and developed by the company's own engineers, wrings the last usable ounce of barite out of every ton of ore. And to replace rotary kilns, now maintained on a standby basis, Magcobar has installed this tremendous multi-hearth furnace that not only prevents scorching of the ore, but also provides a greater capacity at no greater unit cost. And as with any quality producer, Magcobar relies on constant quality control through its own laboratory to assure product uniformity. Never-ending research seeks constantly to improve drilling muds and their characteristics and develop new products that will further brighten the good name of the leading drilling mud of the industry. Thus, the company will be ready with whatever drilling mud materials oil exploration may need in the future. And while research is preparing Magcobar for tomorrow, Magcobar of today flows steadily toward its markets. Magcobar's primary market extends throughout the oil-rich West, all the way from Canada to the Gulf, and beyond to the fabulous tidelands or continental shelf for offshore drilling operations. Every American drilling area is served and served well by one or even several of Magcobar's 400 dealers. Dealers who know that Magcobar service must go where the drilling goes, even if it means loading field laboratory equipment aboard a plane for flight to an offshore drilling rig far from land. For drilling problems must be solved by drilling mud, whether the oil field is covered by the dust of the desert or the waves of the sea. Only an aggressive merchandising program can keep the large share of the market which has already been won. For dependable around-the-clock service, the company relies on long-established, independent, local businessmen with their fingers directly on the pulse of their own local market to make the Magcobar service program click in the field. From long experience in his own territory, the dealer is able to carry a balanced stock of all Magcobar products for routine use, as well as extra heavy supplies of the drilling materials needed to meet oil field emergencies. And Magcobar dealers and materials are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For in drilling for oil, emergencies don't watch the clock. Wise in the ways of oil, the experienced oil man can almost feel trouble. The driller on Wildcat number 1 is no exception. A blowout is threatening and he goes into action with only seconds to spare. Working against time and using available mud at the rig, the crew begins to build up the weight of the mud to hold back the threatening gas pressure until a Magcobar engineer or mud doctor can diagnose the trouble and prescribe the remedy. Time is still vital, and now that the threat of immediate blowout has been temporarily offset, the tool pusher, boss man of the drilling crew, gets busy on the radio phone to his dealer, who assists in locating the local field engineer. Magcobar's corps of trained mud engineers are as close to trouble as the radio phones in their cars. On call night and day to go into action when action counts. Every Magcobar mud engineer is thoroughly familiar with the geological formations in his territory, and from this knowledge, he already has radioed for heavyweight mud. Right now, the job is to find by test just how much is needed. And by the time the mud doctor has the answer, the bulk truck of heavy mud has pulled in, ready to feed its load directly into the well's mud circulation system. So once again, Magcobar's organization has proved its worth in emergency as well as day-to-day routine. The steadily expanding search for oil assures constantly increasing demand for Magkabar mud services, even without an added factor that positively guarantees it. At first, in the chancy game of drilling for oil, rich deposits could be located with shallow wells. But over the years, oil prospectors have had to drill deeper and deeper holes to make their strikes. Present holes are reaching below 20,000 feet, and oil experts agree that far deeper holes will be needed to reach the oil for our future needs. Depths of 4 miles, 5, even 6 miles are freely predicted. As drilling goes deeper and well pressures become greater, mud techniques continue to advance in step with other petroleum developments. So, whether the odds against finding oil remain as they are today, at 10 dry holes to 1 strike, in the costly, risky game of oil exploration, whether the odds go higher or whether they go lower, the one sure thing, no matter how you play the game, is that mud, Magkabar drilling mud, is your ace in the hole.